Hare Krishna. So we'll start this session dedicating this to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So just before we start these sessions, I would just like to give few keys to this overall how this level 2 is going to go through. So these are going to be more of I would say interactive sessions. We would request you all to come in, maybe the portion what we are covering, at least go through to start with, going through the purpose in the Bhagavad Gita as it is book. The slides, we like the prior 9 sessions, we will be posting the slides into the Google Drive, and we'll be sharing the link as well. And each of these slides, some of you may have already noticed it, that we kind of provide comments, in the comment section of the slides. So you can find, some content about the slides which we are speaking during the session in the notes or comment section based on what, kind of model of phone you have. Recordings will be done, and we'll be posting the links as well, like before. And like I said, I would request you all to start reading this book. Today we are covering the introductory session, and the book itself has, Prabhupada has given a nice introduction in the start, and the sessions will be, focusing on going more depth and details further, more shloka wise. And this session, particularly this session, is just to give some key information about overall Bhagavad Gita, how it is structured and how it is glorified, by great personalities, and how should we understand it. Yeah, we keep hearing it's not easy, and yes, in a way, but we need, we'll share what kind of attitude we need to also have to understand it, and what is the purpose of reading Bhagavad Gita. So to start with, so this is the book, right? Bhagavad Gita. When we say Bhagavad Gita, so when we split it, it's 2 words, right? Bhagavad and Gita. What does this mean? So Bhagavad Gita is, Bhagavad means Bhagavan, and Gita means a song, right? So Bhagavad Gita is nothing but song of God. Yeah. Now Bhagavad Gita is also called as Gitopanishad. Yeah. It is because it is a kind of, it is the most important Upanishad, one of the most important Upanishads. And it is known as Gita Upanishad also because it has the essence of all the Vedic literature. Overall, the essence of all the different Vedic scriptures and literature, it is taken, and Krishna is giving this us in the form of Bhagavad Gita. And when we talk about Vedic scriptures, Vedic literature, there are some key things we need to know here as well, that these Vedas, they are spotless. Yeah. And why? Because they are given by Bhagwan himself. Yeah. So Krishna has given them. And they are also called as, Apurusha. That means it is not given by a normal living entity, Apurush, right? It's not given by a normal entity, living person. So this Vedas, these have come from Vishnu to Brahma, Narada, and then to Vyasdev, right? So these are all great personalities, in themselves. So they are kind of empowered by Krishna to give us this most important knowledge, spiritual knowledge. So when we say that these Vedic literatures are spotless, we mean that it means that they do not have 4 kind of defects in them. Yeah. So what are these 4 defects? First one is, illusion. Illusion. Second one is imperfect senses. Third one is, mistake-making tendency, and 4th is cheating tendency. So we as human, when we hear this, we have all of these. We have all of these defects. When I say illusion, why? Because we are under this illusion that we are this body, not the soul, right? this world is what is all in all it is. So that is, we are in this illusionary. Imperfect senses, we all know that, when it comes to senses, all our senses, they are limited. Something like, say, our eyes, we can only see certain size of objects, right, with us. We know we cannot see anything micro and even macro. So we have a limited eyesight within which we can. Similar to hearing, right? So we can only hear certain frequency, right? Not everything. And this is all, which is established by science today as well. So it's not something which should be very surprising for us to know. And so first one was illusion, second one, imperfect senses. Then comes, mistake making tendency, right? And we know every day there might be a time point where we feel that, oh, I did a mistake. So we have that mistake making tendency. We see science, all the established facts, they establish it, and then at certain time point, we see that they kind of overrule. As simple as we can take, something like the planets, right? We don't know. I learned throughout my childhood that there was a planet called as Pluto. But now when my kids are learning, we say it's no more counting. So the science, it keeps evolving. It has, we have that overall in this material world, a kind of, mistake-making tendency. Whereas when we see these Vedas, we will learn later, in this course, how Vedas are spotless also because of, there's no mistake. We see back in Vedas, some facts already in there, something like, how a baby develops within mother's womb, how it evolves, everything is in there. And we are taking so much within the science to establish that stuff, right? So even though these were thousands of years back, still everything in there is right? So the Vedas are, there you will not find mistakes. And then is cheating tendency. So humans, we do have that, right? We do have a cheating tendency within us, even though we don't accept it at times. So, but we learned how Krishna is, our supreme well-wisher, right? So we see how he gives us everything selfless. So these are the four, defects which we see that, which are not in these Vedic wisdom we have with us. And this overall Bhagavad Gita, it is essence of Vedas, like I said. And what does it have? So just a topical insight. So it has around 18 chapters, 700 verses. And if we split those 700 verses, particularly, most of them, of course, are spoken by Krishna. So around 574 of them are spoken by Krishna. Then next highest comes Arjuna, because he's asking all the questions for us. So 84 are spoken by Arjuna. Around 41 are by Sanjay and 1 by Dhritarashtra. So this is the split of these 700 shlokas. Yeah. So let's get started then. So we will start with, we are all here in this session to learn about Gita, right? Now, it is important because we feel it is important. But we can also see today, we'll start with seeing how, great personalities have glorified Gita, that how Gita, applying Gita in their life, it has helped them concentrate, and how much Gita is important. Yeah. So we may think that, this learning is not applicable in today's world, right? So it was only for Arjuna. So let's go through some examples where we have taken some, just limited because we have limited time. So some key examples from each era to show that how even great personalities recognized the value add and the importance of Gita. Yeah. So we'll start with, say, the most within our era. Yeah. So we will start with who are living presently. Yeah? So let's pick up some top personalities. So in the first picture, you see Dr. Vivek Bindra. So he is the CEO of edtech company, right? And he aims to empower the Indian entrepreneurs. He's highly influential and motivational speaker, and he recently conducted around 6 to 7 months back a seminar which was called as Business Yoga. And this seminar was eventually put under a Guinness World Book of Records for maximum live viewers, on the scripture for Gita. Right? So he really helps. He is a motivational speaker. And he's a businessman himself, right? So he shows how Bhagavad Gita helps. In the second picture, we see Alfred Ford, and we learned about him in one of our 9 sessions, that how he has been initiated in our Vedic customs, and how he's married to an Indian woman, and he's following our Vedic culture, even being at that top. And the third in the picture is Tulsi Gabbard. So she is the first practicing Hindu to be elected in the US House of Representatives. So, and she really, describes how Gita has been her primary scripture, and how it helps overall. So we say that we are so busy in our day-to-day life, we don't have time to read Gita. So when we see such personalities, even in today's world, we see how we can also do it, right? So then, when we are talking about today, let's look at a picture of, personalities, famous personalities, maybe 100 or 200 years back. The first one is Albert Einstein. We know him. And we'll see in consecutive slide as how he glorifies Gita. And then comes Gandhiji. And the third picture is of George Harrison. He was a musician, and how he also, got into the Vedic culture of ours. So what does these personalities, the top 2 here says that Mahatma Gandhi. So he says that when doubts haunt me, when disappointments stare me in the face, and I see not one ray of hope on the horizon, I turn to Bhagavad Gita and find a verse to comfort me. And I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming sorrow. About Albert Einstein, he says that when I read the Bhagavad Gita and reflect about how God created this universe, everything else seems so superfluous. So this is what we see, people who are no more, but we know them, and they are just been maybe 100 or 200 years back, right? Now let's go a bit further back, yeah? So some ancient acharyas. So the first picture is of Shankaracharya, and the second is Ramanujacharya. And we all must have heard about them, right? So these are great personalities who lived by their life by the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. And they not only lived, but they propagated the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. And we will see, now as part of this glorification, when we see in different eras, we will see now in next few slides how beautifully Adi Shankaracharya has glorified Gita in Gita Mahatmya. So I will be reading the Sanskrit shloka here, and it would be great if one of you can unmute yourself and try to read the English version. Yeah? So Gita Shastram idam punyam yaha patet prayatah puman Vishnu padam avapnoti bhayashokadi varjitaha. So who is the brave one who is coming up first? I will wait. Okay.
One who with a regulated mind recites with devotion this Bhagavad Gita scripture, which is the bestower of all virtue, will attain to a holy abode, such as Vaikuntha, the residence of Lord Vishnu, which is always free from the mundane qualities based on fear and lamentation.
Thank you, Harshita. So, in this shloka, Adi Shankaracharya is glorifying, what is how we should read Gita, right? So Gita is a transcendental literature, right? And he is clearly saying here that if we read it with regulated mind and devotion, it will bestow all the virtue to us. So all the benefits, yeah. If we read it with regulated mind and devotion, these are the two main factors here. Now, what does this mean? So it needs, we should just not read Gita, but we should study Gita. Yeah. So devotion here is definitely, we need to study Gita with a determination, with a commitment, with sincerity. And only then, we will start understanding. Things start unfolding to us. We in our day-to-day life, since childhood, we must have seen that if we just touch something very topical, it may be just not this Gita class, but anything. You maybe go to a music class, but if you're going to a music class, learning within the class and coming out of it and doing nothing, no practice, nothing, will that really make you, get more deep into it, get more thorough into it? No. So anything needs practice, right? So similarly here, it is very important that if we do anything topically, it will not last. We need to sincerely make the effort, make the attempt. And when we can do for something like an extracurricular activity, then how much seriousness we should have when we are studying something like Gita. Yeah? And what Adi Shankaracharya is saying here is that if we do this, then what is the result? We attain the holy abode, Vaikuntha or Golok Vrindavan, which is the residence of Krishna. Yeah. So these are overall 7 texts which Adi Shankaracharya has given on Gita Mahatmya, and we'll go through each one of them because each one of them gives us a picture as how we should approach, learn Gita overall. Yeah. So this is the next Gita Mahatmya text 2, and you might have seen this if some of you remember during the first 9 sessions we tried to send we did send all these 7 as weekly tasks. So the second one goes as Gitya dhyayana shilasya pranayama parasya cha naiva shanti papani purva janma kritani cha. So can someone read the English version?
I'll read. If one reads Bhagavad Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness, then by the grace of the Lord, the reactions of his past misdeeds will not act upon him.
Thank you, Truptikaki. So again, he is stressing here clearly if someone who read the first shloka is not able to understand it. So we need to read Gita very sincerely and with all seriousness. Yeah. So what is the difference between reading and studying? Reading is, like I said, more topical touch. We read newspapers, we read magazines, we read news, on our mobile phone or TV. But when we talk about studying, we give it all the kind of seriousness. Yeah? We contemplate on it. We try to remember it. So there are so many extra step of efforts we are putting in there. So that's why Prabhupada always said, that we should just not read Gita. We should study Gita. He highlights this every now and then. And that's why he wanted his disciples also to study the scriptures, just not read. Because, of course, he wanted his followers to be like the lawyers quoting the law books of Gita and, to this world, right? So it is important that, we need to develop that seriousness to study and to understand. Yeah. And we'll see what are the qualities we need to have to understand Gita as well later in today's session. Yeah. So the third one then. Maline mochanam punsam jalasnanam dine dine sakrit gitam ritsanam samsara malanashanam. Can somebody please read this?
Yeah, I will read. Okay.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah.
One may cleanse himself daily by taking a bath in water, but if one takes a bath every 1 in the sacred Ganges, water of Bhagavad Gita. For him, the dirt of material life is altogether vanished.
Thank you, Shivani Ragi. So, right. So, so we clean our body every day with, say, soap and water, right? But this shloka clearly says how should we clean our mind. Yeah. So cleaning the body is external, but we need, how can we clean our mind, which is more internal? And it clearly says here that the soap and the water, for our mind is Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. It says here the word Sakrid, Gitamrit Snanam. Sakrid means once, just once. Yeah. We do this, we deep dive into Gita. Yeah. Then Samsara Malanasha. That means all the dirt of this material world will be cleansed, will be destroyed within us. Yeah. And when we always when we talk about Ganga, we know that it is like the first thing it comes to our mind is pure, purity. Yeah. So why Ganga Mata is the river Ganga considered so pure? Because it is coming from the lotus feet of Krishna, from the spiritual world. So we can imagine, if Ganges water is treated so pure because it is coming out from the lotus feet of Krishna, then this Bhagavad Gita is coming from the, from Krishna's mouth, right? He's telling it to us. So it must be so much pure. It must be having the power of being so much pure. And that's what it says here. Even once, if we deep dive into Gita and really try, understand it, then it will cleanse everything within our heart, our mind. Yeah, like we do with the soap and water with our body. Okay. So the fourth one here is Gita Sugita Kartavya Kim Anaihi Shastra Vistaraihi Yasvayam Padmanabhasya Mukha Padmad Vinishrita. So who can read this?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Because Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Good Godhead. One need not read any other Vedic literature. One need only attentively and regularly hear and read Bhagavad Gita. In the present age, people are so absorbed in mundane activities that it is not possible for them to read all the Vedic literatures. But this is not necessary. This one book, Bhagavad Gita, will suffice because it is the essence of all Vedic literatures, and especially because it is spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Thank you, Nidapati. Okay, so again, I think this is pretty much self-explanatory, right? So again and again, it's reiterated that we need to approach Gita. We need to hear Gita, read Gita, understand Gita very attentively and regularly. Yeah. So it will be important for us, for all of us, as we start next week with the first chapter of Gita, to really start, looking into the purpose and the explanations. Yeah. So here, one of the key thing is that it's highlighted that people, Krishna definitely knew, people in Kali Yuga will not have that much of level of intelligence to understand all the Vedic literature, right? For us, it is difficult to even understand Bhagavad Gita, which is the, kind of nichode of the whole Vedic literature. So we can imagine how much complex it would be for our level of intelligence to understand the whole Vedic literatures, right? So that's the reason why Krishna himself came down, and through Arjuna, he's letting us know, the overall sar, right? Overall nectar of this Gita. So further down, then the fifth one is Bharata Amrita Sarvasvam Vishnu Bhakta Vinishritam Gita Gangodakam Pitva Punarjanma na Vidyate. So, Jyoti ji, did you want to read it?
Yes,
Yeah. go
thank
ahead.
you. By drinking the Ganges waters of the Gita, the divine quintessence of the Mahabharata, emanating from the holy lotus month of Lord Vishnu, one will never take rebirth in the material world again. In other words, by devotionally reciting the Gita, the cycle of birth and death is terminated.
Thank you, Jyoti ji. So, the glories of Bhagavad Gita in this verse, it's really described very beautifully here. So, what is the saying? So we know that Gita was spoken, during the Kurukshetra war, and Kurukshetra war is part of Mahabharata, right? So here the Bharata Amrita Sarvasvam, Bharata here refers to Mahabharata. Yeah. So what are we saying in this verse? That so Bharata Amrita Sarvasvam. So Gita is the Amrit, yeah, of Mahabharata. Yeah. Vishnu Vakrad Vinishritam. So it is coming out from the mouth of Vishnu. Gita Gangodakam Pitva. So that means that if this Gita in itself, it's like Ganga, anyone who drinks this nectar coming from the mouth of Lord Krishna, Punarjanmana Vidyate, they will never take birth again in this material world. And if we don't take birth in this material world again, go back to Krishna in the spiritual world, then all our life problems will be solved. Right? And here, Shankaracharya promises it here. So it's really strong, So it may come to our mind, when we see this. So reading Gita once, is that enough? Okay, so far we understand that we should read Gita, we should study Gita, but we might think that, okay, I'll read it. Once I reach the end, that's enough, right? So that's why Sripada Aditya Shankaracharya here highlights that by drinking means just not reading and leaving it, practically applying that in our life. Yeah? Unless we just keep reading, again, that will be really topical. Unless we don't drink the nectar. It's not about tasting the nectar. He's saying drinking the nectar, right? And drinking means it's like applying the learnings, what we are learning throughout Gita in our life. Unless we don't apply them, we will not see the transformation, will not get the taste of this overall scripture. Yeah. And we'll see it in due course as we go chapter wise, how we can apply Gita and how it is practically possible. It's not a rocket science. It is practically possible. Okay, so the sixth text, Sarvopanishad Kao Dugda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhukto Dugdam Gitamritam Mahat. So anybody there to read this?
Yeah, I can.
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
All the Upanishads are like a cow, and the milker of the cow is Lord Shri Krishna, the son of Nanda. Arjuna is the calf. The beautiful nectar of the Gita is the milk. And the fortunate devotees of fine theistic intellect are the drinkers and enjoyers of that milk.
Thank you again, Jyotiji. So, Sarvopanishad Gao, yeah, that means Sarvo Upanishad. So, all the Upanishads are like a cow, yeah. We are comparing here. Dogda Gopala Nandana. So, Krishna, Gopala Nandana, Krishna is like a cowherd boy who is milking, yeah, the cow. Yeah. So, if all the Vedas are the cow, then what is Krishna? He is the cowherd boy who is milking the Vedas. Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhakta. So Partho Vatsaha, we know it's Arjuna. Arjuna is the calf here. He's representing the calf. Sudhir Bhakta. So what does this mean? Sudhir Bhakta? That it is just not, Krishna is not milking the Vedas, for just Arjuna. Through Arjuna, he's also milking this for all of us, all the devotees. And Gita Amritam Mahat. So which is this Gita Amrit? What is the milk here which Krishna is taking? It's like, again, the essence of all the Vedas from the cow, he's milking as a cowherd boy, and that milk is Bhagavad Gita. So that is like the whole essence of all the Vedas coming out. Yeah, and Krishna is taking that out for us. Yeah. So, and the last one here, this is this is one of the famous ones. So Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Geetam Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva Eko Mantras Tasya Namani Yani Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. So Ekam Shastram Devaki Putram Geetam. So Adi Shankaracharya is highlighting that there need to be only one holy scripture, the divine Gita, right? Just Ekam Shastram, only one, which is coming out from Devaki Putra, which is Krishna, which is Gita. Eko Devo Devaki Putra. There is only one worshipable Lord, which is Lord Krishna. Eko Mantrasya. So only one mantra, which is his holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. And Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. So only one seva, which is mainly only one duty, which is devotional service to Krishna. Yeah. So we will discuss this, further in Gita, how we can perform this devotional service, because like he highlights here, that is the main duty and the only duty of us. Yeah. So we'll learn that in Gita. So far we learned how this is glorified. So we should know that it's just not Arjuna, but even great personalities in different eras, really, it shows the importance and glorifies. Now, this is, one of the key aspects what we learned, I said, is how to understand Gita. We need to understand it as Arjuna did from Krishna. So we know that this is the most commented spiritual book, right? We heard in the 9 sessions that around 700 commentaries are done on just this one spiritual book. It is the highest commented one, right? And it is strange that anyone and everyone, little bit, once they get famous, they want to comment on Gita. I was a bit surprised when I visited one of my cousin's house and I saw one of the radio jockeys of Bangalore. He also has come up giving his commentary on Gita, which was pretty surprising for me. So there's anyone and everyone, we see that how they are, utilizing to be famous. There are different reasons there might be, but Prabhupada said in the introduction, if you read through that, as far as he has seen, not only people in America, which is where he went, but also in India, there are so many editions of Gita which are not authoritative. It doesn't say what Krishna is giving the message as it is, but it's more on, their own opinions. People are putting their own opinions, commentaries, without touching the main subject matter of Gita. Why Krishna really said this, right? So, and hence we see that how Bhagavad Gita as it is, from Srila Prabhupada, it is the most selling, book globally. And when we say, when we go through anything, we need the authentication, right? So we need to, when we read, a really authentic book would be something which can transform your life, right? Which can change your mindset. And we'll see how we saw that how, this Bhagavad Gita as it is in the current pool of great personalities, it has actually transformed their lives, right? We can see it not only in India, but also how we see foreigners, they're coming down to India and they're settling in Vrindavan. We saw the example of Chandrika Mataji, who came from Russia, right, in the 9 sessions. How they come down to India, they face all the, still facing all the difficulties. They have their life transformed, right? So we need to understand Gita in the perspective of Arjuna. We can correlate this with example so that it sits better with us. That if we want to take a particular medicine, right, which is prescribed, we have to follow the instructions of the physician or the doctor. Yeah, We cannot just randomly take it just because one of our family or one of our friend suggested it, right? Similarly, Bhagavad Gita should be taken as it is spoken by the speaker, right? Krishna himself. We cannot have our own opinion, yeah, our own way of interpreting things. It should be taken as it should be accepted as the speaker is trying to say, right? So, and Arjuna, this shlokas show how Arjuna accepted Bhagavad Gita, yeah, and it should be noted by us how he acknowledges and how his approach to Krishna. Yeah? So, Arjuna uvacha param brahma param dhama paravitram paramam bhavan purusham shashvatam divyam adi devam ajam vibhum ahustvam rishaya sarve devarsh naradastata asito devalo vyasaha swayam chaiva bhavishime sarvam etadvritam manye yanma vadasi keshava nahi te bhagavan vyaktim vidur devana danavaha. So Arjuna said, he acknowledges here. So you are the personality, supreme personality of God, the ultimate abode. Yeah, the purest, pavitram, he says, right? When we say ultimate abode, that is param dham. Pavitram means purest. Yeah? Paramam bhavan, absolute. You are, shashvatam, so eternal. Divyam, transcendental. Adi devam, so original person. Ajam means unborn, and Vibhum means greatest. So he is glorifying Krishna here. He is taking. And when we see all these, when this shloka is actually, like you can see, it is from 10th chapter, shloka 12 to 14 of 10th chapter. So by now, Krishna had already explained Arjuna, that what is the overall, we have spoken about various matters so far. And now Arjuna is concluding that, he accepts that Krishna is the greatest. Yeah, he is the original person. And some may say, that Arjuna was Krishna's friend. A friend will always talk for friend, right? So he is, he's just saying because Krishna is his friend. And that's why he also highlights, so many, great personalities or rishis like Narada, Asita, Vyasdev. So he is highlighting that and acknowledging. So all the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa confirm this truth about you. They confirm Krishna is the original personality of God. Yeah? And Arjuna acknowledges that Krishna himself is declaring it. Yeah? So in the end, he says that I totally accept as truth all that you have told me. We need to see the faith, right, which Arjuna had. And in the last shloka, he says that neither the demigods nor the demons, O Lord, can understand your personalities. So this is really also pretty interesting because demigods are higher personalities than us, right? And we see here how, even though they are higher at the level, still, Arjuna is highlighting that even both demigods and demons may not know him. It's only the devotees, who can know Krishna. Yeah? And next shloka also, here the Arjuna, we see how Arjuna understands Krishna, right? And we also see one more shloka, this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is said by Bhishma Pitama, right? Esha vai Bhagavan Shakshad Adyo Narayana Kuman Mohanan Mayaya Yol Lokam Gudascharati Vrishnishu. So this Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of God. So Bhishma Pitama was one of the exalted devotees of Krishna. And he says here that, Bhagwan Shakshat. So Krishna himself is Bhagwan. Adyo Narayana means he's the first Narayana, right? He is the first, and that's why he's the supreme. Yeah. And he nicely also mentioned that Mohayan Mayaya Loka. So he Gudascharati Vishnu. So, but Krishna, this Krishna is bewildering us, and he is moving, within the Krishna dynasty. And he's putting us in, in Maya because with his own self-energy, right? Self-created energy. So we see how Bhishma also acknowledges and how the approach. Yeah. And this, we see that this happened after the Kurukshetra war ended, when Krishna took Yudhishthira Maharaj to take off his lamentation to Bhishma Pitama. And this is when Bhishma acknowledges, at the depth that. Now, we see how, Arjuna, Bhishma, we need to understand it as per Arjuna, right? So now what is Krishna also acknowledging? We learned this, we saw this shloka in one of our 9 sessions, that Krishna highlights in 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that this knowledge, has to be received only through a disciplic succession. Yeah? Evam parampara praptam imam rajarishiyo viduhu sakalena mahata yogo nashta parantapa. So this supreme science was just received through the chain of disciplic succession. And the saintly kings understood it that way. But in course of time, it was broken. And therefore the science as it is appeared to be lost. And because it was lost, Krishna came again on this earth to give it, to revive it in the form of Bhagavad Gita. And like we learned, when we talk about disciplic successions, we learned about the 4 different sampradayas. So if we have to learn Bhagavad Gita, it has to be from one of these 4 authenticated sampradayas. Right? Now, this is the, a nice shloka from, again, describing what is the qualification, why Krishna is saying this to Arjuna, why Krishna is only choosing Arjuna in the battlefield. When we had great personalities like Dronacharya, Bhishma Pitama, there were so many great personalities there. So why Arjuna? So, Sa evayam mayati adya yoga prokto puratanaha bhakto sime sakacheti rahasyam hi etad uttamam. Would somebody like to read the English translation?
That very ancient science of the relationships with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mastery of this science.
Thank you, Nitakaki. So, like we have highlighted here, why is Krishna giving this information to Arjuna? Because he's a devotee as well as a friend. So these are the qualifications of Arjuna, right? So here we see that we saw in the prior shloka, right, where Arjuna mentioned that neither the demigods nor the devils understand. And the answer is here, only devotees can answer. Being a devotee is a primary thing to understand Bhagavad Gita, to understand Krishna. Yeah? Now he's, he's telling Arjuna here that he's telling this supreme secret to him. Why? Because of this, right? Without being a devotee and having that devotion, it will be very difficult for us to understand Bhagavad Gita. With speculative mindset, we cannot. We need to have that devotee mindset to take up that. Only then the spirit of devotion should be there. Only then we can, sink in the message, what is being given by Krishna. We should not, some people think that, oh, Krishna is one among us. He was just one of the great personalities, right? He had some extra power, not much and more beyond this. But that's not the case. We saw how great personalities acknowledge clearly in our main scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam, that Krishna is the supreme. He is the Adyo Narayana, first Narayana, right? So the person who is, who tries to, even if, we are not sure, we should at least theoretically, when we see these confirmations in our scriptures, in our Vedas, that Krishna is the supreme, at least theoretically, we should start accepting that Sri Krishna is the supreme personality of God. And with that submissive spirit, that is one of the key qualities we need to have, that we need to have a submissive spirit to understand this difficult subject of Gita, because it is a mystery, right? And we need to comment here that Why we need to understand as Arjuna? Because Arjuna had a faith on Krishna. He knew he's the Supreme Personality of God, right? And he even then, he accepted him. He was his friend, but he also accepted him as his guru, right? So it's that shows that how with submissive spirit he surrendered to Krishna and to understand. So this is how we need to understand, and we have just put this together in this one slide just to show a schematic representation that this is the introduction. So Lord Krishna gave the knowledge first to Vivaswan, which is the sun god, then to Manu, then to Vishwaku. He then, because it was lost in due course, he gave then to Arjuna, right? And Arjuna, what were his qualifications? He was a devotee and a friend. Yeah? And these are the qualities which we need to understand people. Now, when we tell about here a friend, it's more on also the ground of we need to be a devotee and we should have a direct relationship with Krishna. And Arjuna had the relationship of a friend with Krishna. Right? So as soon as one becomes a devotee, we also have a direct relationship with Krishna. And this is a kind of detailed subject in itself, and we'll learn it in due course, in our course. But there are, 5 different ways of relationship of each one of us with Krishna. Originally, we have that relation in the spiritual world with Krishna, but because of this illusionary material world, we have forgotten. Yeah. So what are these 5 relationships? One is, a devotee who is having the relationship with Krishna in passive state, active state, as a friend, as a parent, and as a lover. So these are the 5. Yeah. Now here in the slide, and like I said, one of the key thing I would request you all is to have patience, because there might be few things here and there where you might feel, I need more. And we will come to this. This is just to give the feel as what we are going to cover in due course of this Gita course. Yeah. So there are just the last thing here, 3 classes of transcendentalists. We understood before that there are jnanis, yogis, and bhaktas. And I can remind you this in correlation with, we gave the example of sunlight, sun disk, and sun god. So there are 3 aspects of absolute truth. One is the light, which is and jnanis, the impersonalist, they consider this part of the absolute truth. Yogis are the localized form. They focus on the localized form, which is Paramatma, which is the sun disk in that case. And the sun god, example of that here is Krishna. So bhaktas, devotees are the one who believe on the personalized form of Krishna himself, nor the Paramatma which is in our heart, nor the light. Yeah? And we also saw in last class how Krishna clarifies when Arjuna asks the question, who is perfect? The person who focuses on impersonal light, or a localized aspect, or your personal form. And Krishna confirms a perfect devotee is the one who is for my personal form, right? So we saw that. Now, just on quick touch on purpose of this Bhagavad Gita overall, why Krishna spoke, this Bhagavad Gita. Like, we learned the example of the smartphone, right? What is the main purpose of the smartphone? And who is, it can be used for various purposes, but it may have, every new model of the smartphone may have some key new feature, right? Who knows about this feature the best? The person who made this phone, this model of the phone, right? The manufacturer. Similarly, we learned that this is our human body. The manual for this human body is Bhagavad Gita, right? And who knows the best how to utilize this? What is this human body meant for? It is the manufacturer of this, right? Human body, which is Krishna. Yeah? So we need to understand that Bhagavad Gita is, a manual for our human body. So like we have manual for other products. So we need to follow what the manufacturer is giving, yeah? To utilize our lifetime. So this is a shloka then, from 18th chapter. By this time, Krishna has already given Arjuna, like you can imagine, this is the last chapter. So Krishna has given Arjuna all the confidential knowledge, yeah, so far. But Krishna here highlights Sarva Bhuya Tamam Bhuyah Shrunu Me Paramam Vachaha Ishtosi Me Dradam Iti Tato Vyakshyami Te Hitam. Because you are my very dear friend, I'm speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of God. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit. So far, until 18th chapter, Krishna gave stepwise confidential information, more and more and more to Krishna. And now he's saying here, he is going to give now the most confidential information. What is that most confidential information? It's this. So this shloka is the most important verse of Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because to highlight the importance of this shloka, Krishna has given this shloka twice. This is the only shloka spoken twice by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. And it is the main one, the most important verse. Yeah. So manmana bhava madbhakto madhya jimam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosine. So Krishna is telling the most confidential knowledge here. What is that confidential knowledge? Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage unto me. Thus, you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. Right? This same instruction is repeated, yeah, in 9th chapter, and we have that shloka as well. But this essence, the main here is man mana bhava mad bhakto. So always think of me. Mad bhakto, become my devotee, right? So it should be carried out not only by Arjuna, but all the living entities. Krishna is saying this to all the living entities. And we see the same shloka in 9th chapter. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhya jimam namaskuru mame vishasi yuktvavam atmanam matparayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me. Worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Right? So the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to what? To deliver the mankind, from this material existence. Yeah. Everybody is in difficulty. We all face difficulty. We saw how Arjuna faced. Arjuna was such a top, great personality. Still, he was facing difficulty, right? He was in a difficult situation, and we are also. So, what did Arjuna do? He completely surrendered to Krishna, right? We need to do the same. We also are full of anxiety, right, in our life. But the purpose of Gita is that we need to, Krishna is clearly saying here, think about him, become his devotee. Yeah, this will help us to transform our material life into the spiritual. And at the end, what is the end point? End point is this: Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajati ante kalivaram tam tam evaiti kamteya sada tadbhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Krishna is saying this in 8th chapter. So at the time of death, each one of us, whatever state we are at, whatever we remember when we quit this body, we will attain that without fail. Right? And we saw this example as a cockroach. A person has done his whole life the karmas of a cockroach to become a cockroach in next life. But at the end of his life, while he's quitting his body, he's thinking, I wish I would be in a palace. Then in the next life, based on his karma, he will become a cockroach and in a palace. So Krishna says here, yeah. So the main thing for us, purpose of Bhagavad Gita comes here. So I'll just walk through this. So what is the purpose of Vedic literature? Let's start with that. So when we read Bhagavad Gita scriptures or Srimad Bhagavatam, all these Vedas, our material energy is converted into spiritual energy. Yeah. Instead of reading spending heavy amount of times hours together into newspapers, magazines, we need to cultivate the habit of reading our scriptures, and these are not scriptures which are made by a common man. We saw, right? These are made by, Krishna himself, who don't have 4 defects, right? So, and what if we keep reading these, right, and understanding and imply that in our life, we develop a mindset which will be more focused on Krishna. And in the end, it will help us to remember Krishna at the time of death. That is our end point. So purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to understand how we should lead this life, so, and how to follow devotional service. And by practicing that devotional service, at the end of our time of this birth, it will allow us to remember Krishna. And Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita that at the end time, if we remember him, we go back to spiritual world at once, right? And that's what he highlights to Arjuna, that always think of me, dedicate your activities to me, fix your mind and intelligence to me. And if mind and intelligence is fixed on Krishna, then at the time of death, it will be easier for us to remember Krishna and we'll attain the spiritual world. And this is just like, we compared this with the exams, right? A student who continuously puts efforts to learn throughout the year, to study throughout the year, definitely has a better result than the person who just tries to knock it at the end, right? Just limited preparation, the conceptual understanding of that student can never be there, right? So we need to, have a lifestyle where we are involving Krishna in all of our activities, such that at the time of death, we remember Krishna, and then we have to, which will resolve all our problems of life, going back to spiritual world. So with that said, just quickly going through the structure of Bhagavad Gita. Like I said, Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters, 700 verses. It's divided majorly into 3 parts, these 18 chapters, which is Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. Yeah. And this has been done by great acharyas like Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, even Srila Prabhupada. They describe Gita in dividing it into 3 major parts, each of these yogas. And then it has 5 subject matters or truths, which is, it talks about Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma. Yeah, these 5. So these 5 are the major subject matters. We understand Krishna, who is the Ishvara. We understand that we are not this body, we are Jiva, we are soul, our karma and the cycle, and how time is the factor which, it interrelated factor, interrelates all these. And then the material nature. We learned about material nature in one of the classes, how everything we do is under the influence of material nature. And if we are under this material nature, who is material nature under? Krishna, right? We saw the references of shlokas as well. Okay? So this 3 main divisions, why Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga? Because the main subject matter of Gita is yoga. What is yoga? Yoga means to connect with the Lord, to connect with Krishna. And Krishna has said that we can connect with him, through 3 sides. That is, we can connect with Krishna through our activities, which is Karma Yoga. We can connect with Krishna through knowledge, which is Jnana Yoga. And we can connect through practical engagement of our mind and intelligence, which is Bhakti Yoga. And of course, we'll go more detail on these. So how we describe it is that first 6 chapters, which are dealing with Karma Yoga, are the lower part of this beautiful jewelry box. And the top lid of this box is the last 6 chapters, which is Jnana Yoga. And what is in the middle, the essence, it is which has the diamond ring, which is the Bhakti Yoga, yeah, the devotional service. So this is how it is divided. So this first 6 chapters under the part 1 of the Karma Yoga. And next week we'll start the first one, which is observing the armies on battlefield of Kurukshetra. And the second one, again, it is the key, the essence, of Bhakti. So Bhakti Yoga. And the last one is giving us, about this whole focus is about the material nature. Yeah. So with this, I think we are coming to the end of this session. So overall, I would just like to put that, Bhagavad Gita really helps us in our day-to-day life. We will see it, how it helps us to make better decisions and right decisions. It builds a self-confidence, our acceptance level increases. And, also it's a self-help, like Gandhiji said, if he was in problem, he just goes and opens a verse. So it's a self-help rather than being dependent on others. And it also makes us understand, when we go through the Bhakti Yoga session and even other parts, we realize how much immensely Krishna loves us. We may not, we may think we don't have time to go through this in depth and detail. But just imagine, if Krishna and Arjuna, when was Gita spoken? At the war front. If Krishna and Arjuna, just such great personalities, could take out time to speak Gita at the war front, which, then why can't we take out some time, right? And what did that lead into? Taking that much of time by Arjuna and Krishna led Arjuna, come out with flying colors, right? All his problems were resolved and he fought. So he had a solution. So at the end, we would also get a solution, right, for our problems. So with that said, I'll end the session and I'll open for any questions we may have.